What's your favorite creepy campfire story? Gosh. Let's see if I can recall it correctly. There was a body of a fairly large person once found in the woods. They were quickly killed, and there was nothing extremely off about the scene, except he had half of his pointer, ring, and pinky finger all missing from his left hand. No one could find the missing fingers, and they never found any clues. A few weeks later, another body was found. Another man who was a bit smaller than the previous guy. Same situation. Quickly killed, and 3 fingers missing all from the left hand, and still no clues. A few more weeks went by, and this time it was a woman who was found. Smaller than the second guy found. Same fingers missing from the same hand. This went on for a while, with the victims getting smaller and smaller, until it was kids' bodies being found. One teenager's body though, only had the ring finger and pinky finger removed. The police found a fingerprint at this crime scene, and they found it matched the prints from a theft record from the previous victim. The guy telling the story then told the kids that the killer was searching to replace his fingers, and so far, he had yet to see if the fingers of children their age would fit. He then took off his glove, showing he had a scarred pointer finger and was missing half his ring and pinky finger, and then lunged at the kids while screaming. He later told the kids he lost the 2 in a work accident, and doctors were able to save his very mangled pointer finger. He told this story every year at camp. This is amazingly well done. Both your storytelling and the digitally impaired man's commitment. I worked as a camp counselor for a few summers and had a great signature ghost story. I don't really remember too many of the details, but the gist was there was some ghost who would kill you unless you gave him 2 of your teeth and told him 2 other names of people to kill. It was a fine story, but the real kicker came at the end of the night. When all my baby teeth had been replaced with adult teeth, 2 of them never came in and were missing. For a few years I had a retainer with 2 fake teeth to fill the gaps. Before sending the kids off to bed I would pop the retainer out in secret and give them a big old toothy smile. Scared the absolute bejesus out of the little buggers every time. That's amazing. The best campfire stories are the unique ones that can only be told because of a special prop like that. I remember one that one of my Cub Scout leaders told us on a camp out when I was Prob 7. It took place during pioneer times. A man and his wife traveled west in hopes of either striking it rich with gold, or at worst, finding a nice plot of land to settle down on and farm. Manifest destiny and whatnot. A few months into their journey they come across just the spot. A beautiful plot of land to make their new home. Winter would be coming in a couple months, so they build a hasty shack and figure they'll hunker down there for the winter and build a more established house in a few months when the weather is more permitting. They don't worry, as the area is teeming with wildlife for hunting and trapping, so they figure they'll be set for food. A couple of months go by and the winter is bitter cold and unrelenting. They finished off the last of their food stash, and they haven't seen so much as a squirrel in weeks. They're both slowly starving and freezing to death as they huddle in their shack, day after day with no end in sight. The man's wife is delirious with hunger. Fearing that they will soon be dead, he decides to go for a hunt. He musters the energy to bundle up and heads out, determined to stay out as long as it takes to find them both some food. A couple of days pass as the man takes shelter under impromptu stick shelters, keeping warm with a campfire in the nighttime and hunting in the daytime. Nearly frozen to death. Mercifully the man spots a beautifully plump rabbit several yards away. He takes aim with his musket and bang. It's a perfect shot. With a newfound energy the man runs home, giddy to finally feast with his wife. What he doesn't know is that while he was gone, his wife had discovered some tasty flesh of her own. Literally. The hunger had driven her insane, causing her to believe that her now frostbitten fingertips were ladyfinger cookies. She started off with a few nibbles here and there, slowly pulling the flesh away from her bones. After just a couple of hours both hands were nothing but bone. So she worked her way up her arms to the elbow. The feeling of something in her stomach just continued to drive her further, until she had chewed away at every last bit of skin she could reach, culminating in her chewing off her own lips. The husband approached the shack with his now frozen kill when he got an uneasy feeling. Fearing the worst, he steps up to the door and slowly opens it, expecting to see his wife's corpse shriveled on the floor. But instead what he finds is even worse. This zombie-like creature with exposed teeth and bones writhing on the floor at the sight of him, chomping its jaws with an insatiable hunger. At that point, one of the scouts screeched for the leader to stop, which I was extremely thankful for, as it was easily the most terrifying thing I had ever heard at the age of 7. The scout leader told it with real conviction too. Honestly still gives me the creeps if I go camping and happen to think about it sitting around a fire. That's a great story to tell 7-year-olds. This reminds me of the story about the girl and her dog that licks her hand when she's in bed. Heard that story way too soon and it never really left me. Up to this day I think about it occasionally when I lie in bed with my arm hanging down. My family had one called the man in the corn, or beans in the corn. There was once a hobo who was stealing ears of corn from a local man's garden. Now food was hard to come by, and someone stealing that which you're growing was especially frustrating. The man saw the hobo in the garden and fired a shotgun shot over the hobo's head. The next day, the hobo was back there again stealing ears of corn. The man decided he would teach the hobo a lesson, so he poured all the lead shot out of his shotgun shells and filled them with small dry beans. The very next day the hobo was back in the cornfield again, and the man fired twice on the hobo, and the hobo screamed and ran down the corn rows fast, bleeding the whole way. The man watched for days, but the hobo was never seen again. Some days later, the man still had bean shells in his shotgun, so he aimed at a plank of wood standing over by his well. The plank ripped to pieces. When the next planting seasons came, the farmer walked his cornfield to its far corners to cut corn husks and prepare to plow. Along the way, he found tiny bean plants coming up through the soil, one here, another there, all lining up to lead him to a big bunch of beans coming up along the edge of the field. When he went to examine the bunch of beans, he first saw shoe soles turned to one side, and then the outline of a body sank in the mud and soil. He realized he had killed the hobo, and the random beans that had fallen out of his body had sprouted along the way. My father had bought that particular farm during the war years, and he said for 20 years, random bean plants would show up in that field. Any bean plant that showed up in our garden was given the chance to grow. And one year there was a bean planted that wrapped around a corn stalk. My father did not harvest the corn ears on that plant. If I remember right, that was an old farming technique. Corn, beans, and a particular squash. Each plant put into the soil what another took away, and growing up the strong corn stalks gave the bean support. The golden arm, or at least the version my mom tells. A fellow is looking to be married to one of the rich merchant's daughters to gain the fortune that would come with her. Fortunately the merchant had an unmarried daughter still, so the fellow begins to court her. The first thing he noticed is that she had a solid gold right arm. She apparently lost it in a childhood accident and her father had a golden arm forged for her. Seeing this as a sign of extreme wealth, he continued with courting her, making her believe he truly loved her and not for her father's money. In turn she fell deeply in love with him. They get married, and the fellow is given his riches along with part of the merchant business his now father-in-law owned, thus giving him more money. However, he soon realized his wife was now of no real use, so he ignored her, gave her gifts, and had dinner with her, but the love he said he felt had disappeared. Angry and heartbroken, the daughter accused him of marrying her for her money, in which he boldly states of course. She was furious, screaming about going to tell her father what a scoundrel he truly was, and their riches would be stripped away along with his job. This angered the fellow. After all, he worked so hard to get to here. He wasn't going to let her take it away. So he pushed her down the cellar stairs and let her snap her neck on the stone. He pleaded heartbroken to the grief-stricken father, losing his most favorite daughter, the fellow's riches intact. The fellow and family hold a funeral for the daughter and weep and cry. When it was but him and his dead wife, he opened the casket and pulled out a saw, for she did not need her golden arm in the grave. That night he slept with the arm under his pillow, not wanting even the servants to see it before he melts it down into bars. He slept soundly until a voice like the wind asks, "Where's my golden arm?" Slow and far away the voice echoed through the sleeping house. So quiet he thought it was just a draft. Until the voice came again. Closer and louder this time. As it down the hall. "Where's my golden arm?" Sitting up, the fellow looked around fearfully. Too scared to do anything as he hears again much closer. "Where's my golden arm?" He felt a heat on his back and a movement from under his pillow. But he was too scared to look away from the door as he hears again. Just outside the frame the wail of, "Where's my golden arm?" It felt like hellfire on his back as he felt the hot metal of the hand on his back, seemingly crawling on its own as he watches the doorknob turn. The maid found his body that morning. Face frozen in horror and hair a bright white. Hands still clutching the sheets around his body. But the strangest thing was that his dead wife's golden arm was on his chest, hand wrapped tightly around his throat. Sorry this is long, but this is the first time I've written this story out. It's always been verbally told. Excellent retelling. Brings back memories.